All right. So this is marriage and ministry balance. Are you all in the right place?
Hey.
One guy is. All right. Okay. Good. So can you all hear okay? Is that crystal clear? All right. So first question. Is this important?
Yes.
Why would you say that?
Well, learning to get married right now, so
Oh.
we're getting married soon. So I don't know, just wanting to be prepared for what life's going to be together and serving the kingdom together, not just separately.
Okay, good. So you're going to be married.
Yeah.
How soon?
August 9th.
August 9th. Congratulations. All right. Good. Okay. So you're kind of in here. This is a little prep time, huh? Like getting okay. Good. Good. Well, hopefully you'll take a few practical ideas away that'll help you. Anybody else? Why do you think this is important?
Ministry can become your mistress.
Oh, in fact, you just stole one of my lines. Thank you so much. Yeah. Just before I moved to Spokane, I had an older pastor pull me aside, and this is what he said to me. He said, "Joe, every pastor has a mistress." I was 26 years old. My eyes went up, and I thought, "Oh, that's awful." And then he said, "It's the church." And it's true. It's true. You end up getting married to the church, and if you're not careful, well, that's not good. Yeah. Okay. What else? Why else would it be important? Can I ask a question? Does it ever go the other way? Do people in our culture put too much emphasis on the family and not enough on the Lord?
Yeah.
Oh my word. Yeah. In fact, what's the modern American idol? Sports. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we have lovely families in our church that are able to come a handful of times a year because of their kids' sports. And my challenge to them when I talk with them personally is, what are you teaching your kids about the importance of Jesus in your lives? That everything else bumps that to the side, right? Jesus gets pushed to the side so that we can do sports. And I also remind them that their kids will probably not play in the NBA. Yeah. Or any other professional sport for that matter. All right, well, this is important, and it's important on both sides, for both the church and the family. Just a little bit of quick background. I grew up in an alcoholic family. My dad was an alcoholic, and created a lot of hell and chaos in our home. And I grew up, along with my 5 sisters, in learning a lot of traditional codependent behaviors, people-pleasing behaviors, right? You learn to walk on eggshells. Don't rock the boat, don't create problems, because it might set dad off, and then it'll be crazy. And those continued right on into my adult life. In fact, at one point, as a pastor, I saw a therapist to help me unpack some of my codependent baggage and get over my need to always please people. So I started ministry with this kind of driven thing inside me, right? I was driven to please people and make them happy. So if someone would come and complain about something, why don't we do this? Oh, what a great idea. Sure, we'll do that. Why don't we do this? Oh, yeah, I'll do that too. Can you see where that goes? Yeah, pretty soon, now I figured out what I do is when someone says it to me, I say, that's wonderful. You want to do that? Go ahead. Your idea, have at it, right? But so I had this codependent thing, and then I go to Bible college. And at Bible college, one of my favorite professors, Dr. Bixler, he said this multiple times. He said, there is not a hell hot enough for a lazy pastor. Wow. So I thought, so I go into ministry thinking, I've got to watch out for this mistress, but at the same time, if I don't work hard, what's going to happen? God is fanning the flames of hell for me, right? I'm going to burn in the hottest hell possible if I'm a lazy pastor. And then I start pastoring, and one of my idols, a guy named Jerry Cook. Anybody here ever heard of Jerry Cook? Okay, a couple of you. Well, Jerry Cook's a fabulous pastor. He's in heaven now. He wrote a book called Love, Acceptance, and Forgiveness. But I was at a meeting once where Jerry said something that, honestly, I look back on it now, it's really stupid. But here's what he said. He told all these pastors, he said, you want to get up as early as the person in your church who gets up the earliest. I started thinking about that, and I thought about all the people I have who do shift work. They get up 24 hours a day, right? So I would never sleep. So you put all that together, this driven, people-pleasing thing with the hottest hell possible, along with never sleeping, and what do you end up with? A sick pastor. Truly, that's what you end up. So this is bad. So what I finally figured out was, that if we put Jesus first in our lives, that we'll love our families best. There's my big idea. You might want to write that down. That's as good as it's going to get, folks, right there. If we put Jesus first, we love our families best. The more I love Jesus, the better I love my wife. The more I love Jesus, the better I love my kids. Here's an interesting thing. Go search your Bibles and see what it says about ministry and marriage balance. What does it say? Nothing. What it does say is love Jesus first. This is first and most important. Jesus said to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbors yourself. If you love God first, then you end up loving people better. So that's the big idea. Love your family best when you love Jesus first. All right, so the problem, we've already said, the problem is that every pastor has a mistress, the church, and it's not just pastors, but Christians too. Christians can get so busy in ministry, it can absorb all of our extra time. And pretty soon, this is really interesting, pretty soon we don't have time for our families, our friends, and here's the sad thing, we don't have time for lost people either. I meet so many Christians who, when I talk with them about, reaching out to the lost people in their networks, they give me blank stares. Because their networks are filled with who? With Christians. That's who we hang out with, right? We're engaged in the church in our spare times with church people and small groups and doing ministry here and there. And oftentimes we end up insulated from the very people who desperately need to hear what we have to say. And so if we get so busy with church that we don't have time for lost people, we're too busy with church. All right, so let's go to some fix-its then, okay? Problem's pretty simple. We all know what it is. But here are, how many things do I have? A, B, C, D. What else is on there? A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, what's that? 6. Here we go. Letter A. The first thing is that we follow Jesus. We follow Jesus. And I've already alluded to this, really, right? That Jesus is Lord and Savior, that the Scripture has nothing to say about marriage and ministry balance. What it does say is to follow Jesus. What it does say is, you shall have no other gods before me. You'll have no other gods before me. And there are a lot of gods out there. You can make your spouse a god, can you not? You can make your kids a god. You can make your recreation a god. But again, I believe that if we put Jesus first, he leads us to health and to balance, because he's the Lord, the one who deserves to be first in our life, and he's the Savior. And the word Savior, by the way, means the one who brings us to health and wholeness. So Jesus, that's why I say if we love Jesus first, we'll love others best. So first thing that's just really practical, and again, doesn't get any better than this, is follow Jesus. That's number 1. Letter B, prioritize your 5%. Prioritize your 5%. Okay, here's a thought for you, and I got this from my friend Wayne Cordero. And I'm not sure where he got it from, but I know he borrowed it from someone. So this, by the way, you all know that, don't you? That preachers hardly ever have an original thought. That we all borrow from each other, and it's okay. So yeah. Okay, so here's what Wayne said. He said 80% of what you do, anyone could do. 15% of what you do, a few people could do. 5% of what you do, only you can do. So prioritize the 5%. So what would the 5% be? Give me some examples. Only you can do it. No one can do it for you. No one else can do it. Only you can do it. What would it be? There you go. How about, let's start there. How about, love your husband. You don't want anyone else doing that, do you? No. Love your wife. No one else can do that. The dukes go up, right? Yeah.
Your prayer time.
Oh, thank you. How about, your prayer time? Or how about, let's just broaden that. How about your relationship with God? Can anyone else do that for you? When people come up to me and say, Pastor, I'm not getting fed, I want to say, how old are you? When did your parents stop feeding you? Right? Who's responsible for your spiritual growth? Am I responsible for your spiritual growth? No, thank you, Todd. Thank you. I don't even know you, so that would be terrible if I was responsible for your. Yeah. I'm not responsible for your spiritual growth. You're responsible. That's your 5%. Only you can do that. Okay? So your spiritual growth, loving your spouse. How about your kids? Can anyone else be a dad to your kids? Can anyone else be a mom to your kids? The answer is no. No, you can put them in daycare and they can provide a certain amount of care, but no one else can be a mom or a dad. That's your 5%. What else? Okay, thank you. Yeah, how about just taking care of yourself personally? Your physical health, your emotional health, how you manage your time. You know, when people complain about being too busy, I always want to ask them, and whose fault is that? I mean, who makes your schedule? Guess who makes my schedule? Me, right? I mean, I say yes and no to things. So you're responsible for that 5% that only you can do. Prioritize that and make it really, really important. Because here's the deal. Like I said, 80% of that stuff anyone can do. 15% some other people can do. So when it comes to church work and church ministry, could someone else do what you're doing? The answer is yes. We're all replaceable. We're all replaceable. Listen, if I die tonight, they'll find another pastor to run my church. But there won't be another dad for my kids. There won't be another husband for my wife. Is that making sense? So you prioritize that 5% and say, if push comes to shove, right, and something's got to give, I'm going to take care of that 5% that only I can do. Because if I don't do that, no one else is going to do it. This other stuff, other people can do. I've jotted down a few things here that I've thought of over the years. When I die, who will be heartbroken? Do you know who it'll be? My wife, my kids, and my grandkids. And some extended family, right? My sisters. I got 5 sisters. That's why I'm like this. Sorry. Yeah, it'll be my family that'll be heartbroken. There'll be a few people in the church that'll shed some tears, but they're going to get over it pretty quick, aren't they? And the new pastor will come, and they'll either love him or hate him, and that'll be his problem. Here's another one I thought about. Who will never leave? Can I tell you one of the hardest things about being a pastor is when people leave your church. It's just one of the hardest things. And you know why it's hard? Because you love people, you invest in people, you pour into people, you pray for people, and then they leave. And pastors take that personally. I've been doing this a long time. I got a lot of friends who are pastors, and they all sing the same sad song. Right? I got one friend, every time I take him out to lunch, I know it's going to take 5 minutes. Really, it'll take 5 minutes before he starts saying, so-and-so left me. And you know what I always tell him? They're all going to leave. He just loves me. That's why it only takes me out to lunch once a year. But hey, it's true. It's true. They're all going to leave. Think about it. Everyone's going to leave someday, including me. Right? Yeah. Everyone's going to leave someday. We're all temporary residents. We're all passing through, right? So everybody's going to leave. So I'm just saying, when you think about that, like who do I know is going to stay in my church? I got one person that I'm really sure is going to stay as long as I do. You know who that is? My wife. She won't leave me. It might come down to just her and I sitting there, honey, how you doing tonight? So I'm talking about this from a pastor's point of view, but if you're not a pastor, but you're involved in the church, here's the thing. Whatever your job is, whatever you do to put bread on the table, you can't love your job more than your family because someone else can do your job, but no one else can love your family. That's prioritizing the top 5%. Here's the other reality too. If you do love your job or your ministry more than you love your family, you run the risk of losing your family. And here's the interesting thing. If you lose your family, you lose your ministry. You lose your influence. And I've just seen so many pastors do that where they get married to the church, invest all their time in the church, lose their kids, sometimes lose their spouse, and end up losing their influence because of it. Prioritize that 5%. Do what only you can do. All right, here's another priority. Letter C, number 3 here, letter C. Prioritize. Okay, you're going to have to, this is a long one. Ready? Prioritize family for your church. And prioritize church for your family. Let me unpack that for you. Prioritize family for your church. For 38 years, I've told my church this. I said, I love you. I'm here to serve you. I'll give my life for you. But if it comes down to you or my family, hasta la vista. I'm going to take care of my family. And so, I told them, I gave them practical examples of this. I said, you know, if you want to meet with me and my kid's having a soccer game, I'm going to the soccer game. You can meet with me later. Because I figured, I only got this short little window with my kids, right? Doing their stuff with them. And then I don't want to miss that. I don't want to look back. You know, when my kids are graduating from high school, I don't want to look back with regrets and say, you know, nobody on their deathbed ever says, I wish I would have done a couple more meetings with Bob. But a lot of people on their deathbed said, I wish I would have spent more time with my kids or my wife, with the people that really matter the most. So I just tell my church, I say, I love you, and you know, I know you're paying my salary, but here's the deal. My family's first. I'm gonna serve my family first. So if it comes down to a choice between you and them, I'm going with them. But you know what that does? That helps my church understand what their priorities ought to be too. That I don't want them to be so married to the church and ministry that their families suffer. Okay, so that's the one side. By the way, one practical expression of this was really fun. I told you I rarely missed my kids' games or performances or thing. And my youngest son, Michael, in his junior year in high school, played for the state championship in football. And of course, we went to every game. And the semifinal game was on a Friday night over in Tacoma. So we go over to it. And at the time, we were doing 2 Saturday night services and 2 Sunday morning services. So went over, did the Friday night thing, right? They won the semifinals, come back, and now I got a week, right? And I know they're going to be in the final the next Saturday night. Well, I got a week, and we got a series planned out, and I've already got the message half written, so I didn't want to dump the sermon on one of my other pastors, you know, with a week to write it and no prep time and stuff. And I really couldn't have done it ahead of time because I didn't know if they'd win or lose. So I thought, what am I going to do? I don't want to miss my son's game, and I got these 2 Saturday night services. So I talked it over with some of our leaders, and here's what we did. I went in on Friday afternoon into an empty church, and I preached my message in front of a video camera, and I started by just telling everybody, hey, everybody, the reason you're watching me on video tonight is I'm in Tacoma at my son's state championship football game. And so I came in yesterday and taped this message. You're going to hear it. I'll be back Saturday night, and I'll preach it live Sunday. So if you don't like video, you can come back tomorrow morning. That's your problem. I won't worry about it. But I said, you know, here's what I'm doing. Here's why I'm doing it. And here we go. And I gave the message. You know what happened? Both those services, when I started out by saying, I'm not here tonight because I'm in Tacoma at my son's game, guess what the church did? They cheered. They cheered. They applauded. Because for years I'd been telling them, this is how we live. We put our families first. Does that make sense? Okay? So prioritize family for your church. But the flip side of it is prioritize church for your family. Our kids growing up, we have 5 kids, and as we raised our kids, we just let them know this is who we are. We're followers of Jesus, and for us, being with fellow believers every weekend is a priority. It's just the way, and we organize our lives around that. And so they understood, you know, I mean, they played sports, they did, you know, drama and dance and all these different things, but they understood that, and we were fortunate in that we had a lot of services to pick from, right? So if they had something going Sunday morning, they came Saturday night, right? Or Sunday night when we started doing a Sunday night service. But they organized that and built around. But here's the thing, because we did such a fun job of this, our kids loved church. At one point we were doing 5 services on a weekend, and my kids, I kid you not, my kids came to all 5 services. Now they didn't sit in church 5 times. They would, you know, they would go to their Sunday school class, you know, whatever their kids' class was, right? They'd sit in church one time. The other 3, they were out farting around with their friends. But they were having a good time. Can you say fart in this church? Is that all right? Okay, I'm not sure. But they grew up loving church and not wanting to miss. A while back, I was talking with a young couple, Travis and Sarah, at my office, and Travis told me that he had just, the week before, he just bumped into my son, Andy, my oldest son, and he'd asked Andy, what's it like being a pastor's kid? And Andy told him that he loved it. I want to ask you a question. How many pastors' kids say that? Not many. He loved it. And Travis asked him, well, why? What'd you love about it? And he said, he gave him two things. He said, number one, he said, I was never forced to go to church. Now, the interesting thing was they wanted to go. That's why we didn't force them. So we evidently made it fun enough that they liked it. But here's the second thing, and I love this one. He said, I always knew that our family was more important to my dad than the church was. That's why he loved being a pastor's kid. So, prioritize family for your church, prioritize church for your family. Letter D, next one. Set firm boundaries. Set firm boundaries. When our kids were young, as I said, we had 5 kids, it didn't take long to realize that I was overcommitted. I was gone too many nights out of the week. And so my lovely wife sat me down and said, we need to talk about this. And so we talked about it, and here's what we came up with. We had a Sunday night service at that time. We had a Wednesday night service at that time. So she said, there's 2 evenings a week, you're already gone. So she says, I'm going to give you one more. So if if we're going to do dinner out with somebody, if we're going to do a small group, if there's a council meeting, that's 3. But she said, that's it. I want you home at least 4 nights a week for dinner with the family. And so that was the deal. All the time our kids were growing up, I was home 4 nights a week, and I just penciled it in my calendar. So here's the really cool thing. You would call me up and say, hey, could we have dinner on Thursday night? And I'd go, just a sec, let me check my calendar. I go, oh, I'm sorry, I'm committed then. And you say, what about Friday night? And I go, oh, you know what, I'm committed then too. What about Saturday night? You know what, I'm committed then too. You say, man, you are committed. I say, yeah, I am. Now, if people were bold enough to say, what are you doing all those nights? I'd say, I'm with my family. And if they complained about that, I just said, you're complaining to the wrong guy. I'm prioritizing that 5%. This is what only I can do. I just made it really, really clear. Again, that's part of prioritizing family for your church. So I set those firm boundaries and just said I'm booked then on those nights. Another boundary that I had was I have a weekly. I still do this. Lane and I have been married 40 years, and we still date. I do a weekly date with my wife where we go out together and we don't talk work. We talk life, we talk kids, we talk family, we talk interests, we talk books we're reading, we talk about all kinds of stuff, but we leave ministry stuff behind because that's our time as husband and wife. And we just love each other. So I wanted my wife to be happy she was married to a pastor and not resent it. And I wanted my kids to be happy I was a pastor and not resent being PKs. So we set those kind of boundaries. All right, letter E. This is one of my favorite ones. Letter E, if you want to avoid burnout and if you want to have balance in your life, then have a life outside church. Have a life outside church. I talk to so many pastors who have no friends outside of church, no hobbies, no interests beyond ministry. They don't know how to play. All they do is work. And it's a killer. It'll just kill you. I have so many different interests and hobbies. In fact, I was a while back, I was with my brother-in-law and I was flipping through a motorcycle magazine. That's one of my things. I ride big bikes. In fact, you'll love this. For my sabbatical a year ago, it'll be 2 years ago now this summer. For my sabbatical, I got on my motorcycle and I rode the perimeter of the United States. 14,360 miles. Took me 2 months. Just went off by myself and explored for 2 months. Now I've got a good wife to let me do that. You know what I'm saying? Now I've also got an iPhone, so right, we talked multiple times a day, And in the middle of it, I got to Savannah, Georgia. I flew back home and I spent a week with her at the beach, just the two of us, a romantic getaway. Then flew back to Savannah, got on my bike and finished riding around the country. But that's just one of interests. I got a whole bunch of different interests. Well, I was reading this motorcycle magazine and my brother-in-law saw that and he looked at me and he says, you have more hobbies than any guy I know. I don't think he meant it as a compliment. But I smiled and said, thank you. Thank you. Because I meet too many pastors and too many Christians that are just all work and no play, and they fry, they burn out. They're no use to God or anyone else. Listen, Jesus said, unless you become a child, you won't enter the kingdom of God. And what's the full-time work of kids? They play. They play. And I think that's part of what Jesus wants us to do, is play and have some joy in your life. In my denomination, you know, I just came back 2 weeks ago. I was down in Los Angeles meeting with the President's Council. It's about 15 pastors, that influential pastors in our movement. And in that group and in our denomination, you know what I'm known as? The happy pastor. That's what they call me. In fact, my brother-in-law gives this test, this EQ, emotional quotient deal, right? And he's given it to thousands of pastors around the country. And pastors, he said, the three lowest things, he gives the three. I can't remember all three, but one of the three the pastors almost universally score low on is happiness. Pastors are not happy. And that happens to be one of my top three. And he told me, he said, Joe, do you realize how unusual you are to be happy? But this is why, because I have a life outside the church, because I know how to recreate, I know how to recreate my soul and fill myself up and be happy. It's important. Play like a child. Have some fun. It'll make you a better Christian. Truly, it will. It'll make you a better Christian. All right, have a life outside the church. And then the last thing, letter F, let your spouse be your spouse. Let your spouse be your spouse. So I'm going to say this from a man's perspective, but you can flip it. You can do the gender flip here. Your wife married you, not the church. My first Sunday at our little church, remember I told you these 40 people, I wasn't what they were praying for? And this was one of the reasons. First Sunday, I stood up and said, hey, my wife married me, not you. So here's the deal. I don't care what you expect her to do. She's going to do what she wants to do. Not what you expect her to do, right? Because they had this little church of 40 people. They had expectations for the pastor's wife. She was going to play the piano. She was going to lead the choir. She was going to run the kids' ministry. She was going to run the women's ministry. And my wife didn't want to do any of that. She wanted to make love with me. That's what she wanted. I'm telling you, it was sweet. So we just had this really simple deal. I said, look, folks, my wife married me, not you. So set all your expectations aside. I want you to let my wife be my wife. And then that's what I let her be too. I don't have any expectations. Oh, you've got to do this. You're going to be the assistant pastor. You just do what you want to do. We're called and gifted differently, right? Your gifts and calling are different from your spouse's gifts and calling. So let them be themselves. And if you do that, you're going to have a happy marriage, and that will contribute to the balance. All right? 16 seconds left. I am on fire. That's amazing. All right, any questions? Got 9 seconds. Anyone want to ask a quick question before we go down? Yeah, Caleb.
You told me a couple years back, I asked you these exact same questions right before I got married a couple years ago, and I just know one of the things you just had a moment to touch on the importance of the Sabbath, not just as a leader, but just as a man, and how you found the importance of your Sabbath rest.
Yeah.
You had three different ones. You had your weekly, quarterly, and then your biannually ones that you had. Remember? Does that ring a bell?
Yes, yeah, it does. Thank you. Yeah, that's very good. Yeah, I think you know the Sabbath, of course, as all of you know, is Jewish law, and we are not under legal obligation of the Sabbath, but there's great wisdom in it. And the wisdom of the Sabbath, by taking every seventh day to set that aside and to rest. And it's really hard for pastors because most people's day off is when? It's Sunday, which is the day that you're working a lot. So, or if you're involved neck deep in ministry, some of you. I mean, how many of you from RLM are here for more than one service on Sunday? Okay, lots of you. Yeah, look at that. So, not much of a day off. So you got to find a time. You got to find some kind of a weekly rhythm where you get to step away from your job, from your ministry, and that's the whole idea of the Sabbath, is to refresh you and fill you back up. And what Caleb mentioned is that Lane and I established a weekly rhythm, so we have a weekly day off. We established a little quarterly rhythm where we would try to get away for a few days together, and so a little extended Sabbath, if you will. And then the annual thing, of course, is just your vacation. And yeah, by the way, do you know how many church leaders don't take vacations? I was with a pastor not long ago. Well, okay, can I tell you a really fun story? So like I was district supervisor in our denomination for a little while, so it meant I had a whole bunch of churches I oversaw, and I got a budget from headquarters, and every year we tucked a little bit of money from that budget away. And on like year 6 or 7, I was with the pastors at a retreat, and we just had this really wonderful retreat. And I said, okay, we could do this next year. I was joking. I said, we could do this next year, or we could go on a cruise. And their eyes lit up, and they said, really? Could we do that? I said, do you want to? And they said, that would be awesome. And so we looked at this little bank account we'd been saving, and sure enough, we had enough money. There were, I think, like 50 or 60 pastors and their spouses. And we paid for everything. We paid for the airfare. We paid for the week-long cruise. We paid for babysitting their kids so they wouldn't have to worry about that. We paid for missed wages from their jobs for the bivocational guys that were working. We paid for everything. And they went away for a week and had an absolute blast. And at the end of that time, they told me, they said, this was the best thing that you guys have ever done for us. And it was just a week's vacation. We had, I think we had 2 meetings where we prayed. The rest of the time we played. I mean, it was a blast. But I tell you that because one of the pastors on that, you know what he told me? We were sitting out on the sun deck, and he said, this is our first vacation in 17 years. Wow. 17 years. That's sin. Really, that's sin by him and his wife, and that's sin by their church to not insist that they get away and take a break. That's just not healthy. So, yep. All right.